Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and on this Wednesday, and thank you for spending your hour with us today for our Wednesday webinar series as we are populating into the from the waiting room into our webinar. Would love to say hello and see where everyone is from today. So feel free in the chat to introduce yourself. We're amongst family here, and put your name and where you are watching this from today. Lori is actually in Nashville area, and I am in Alpharetta, Georgia. So we already have we're already diverse in our in our locations today. So as I said, please hello Cynthia, welcome. We're glad to have you here in Atlanta. So please Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I just went through there a couple weeks ago. So thank you, Lana, for joining us today. Super excited to have you here. And Yolanda, nice to see you, Yolanda, back from the Braves game last night. So we were glad to have you. Hello, Tessa. Good to see you as well on here. So excited to have everybody. Yeah, so my name is Alice Fox, and I'm the Director of Talent Delivery at Talent Connections. We are excited today about this Wednesday webinar series, Biblical Strategies for Fairness and Respect in HR Practices with Lori Béen. It was interesting because Tom Darrow, the founder of our organization, actually saw this webinar on a different platform and said, "Oh my gosh, Alice, you've got to reach out to Lori and see if she would do this for us." So I'm super excited that we were able to make this happen. It's been a long time in the making, but we finally got to September and our time. So we're excited about that. A few housekeeping items before we get started. This is a 1-hour recorded webinar. If you have any technical questions, you can email me at alicefox@talentconnections.net. Participants will be muted, but please use the chat feature, as you can see, or use the question and answer. We will pretty much do Lori will be doing the question and answer session at the end. But if you do have questions and you can't, just put it in the chat and we will definitely address it. Or as I said, anytime you think of it, put it in the question and answer feature and we will ask, we can talk about that at the end of the webinar. Once again, a reminder, this webinar is approved for a 1 SHRM professional development credit, and that activity code will be at the conclusion of the webinar. So make sure you stick around for that for sure. Today, I am pleased to introduce Lori Béen. She is the owner of paNASH Career Coaching Service and is a certified transformational coach and leadership coach. Based in Nashville, Tennessee, paNASH's mission is to serve, educate, and encourage you by assisting you with the discovery and pursuit of your passions in a way that honors your purpose and your own vision for success, while amplifying who you are personally and advancing you professionally. I love that sentence. Lori possesses 25 years of experience as a career coach with a background in both private practice and in college career services at universities such as Vanderbilt and Belmont. Lori has authored several books, including the Amazon #1 bestseller, Purposeful Branding, Discovering How Your Gifts Can Help You Get Unstuck in Your Career and Best Serve Others. She has been published in the Huffington Post and in Inc. magazine, and she's been featured in the Wall Street Journal. For the 8th consecutive year since 2017, Lori has been ranked in the top 10 best coaches in Nashville. She holds a Master's of Education in Higher Education Administration from the University of South Carolina and a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology. Her passions include stand-up paddleboarding, enjoying the outdoors, lifelong learning, reading, and encouraging others. Lori, we're so thankful to have you here today with this very interesting and exciting topic, and I can't wait to hear about it along with our others for sure. So thank you so much today.
Well, thank you so much, Alice, for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to present this material to your audience. Glad to have you here, audience. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. It can be hard to remember what it's like to be on the other side of the hiring desk. In fact, recently, I just read an article that said 50% of job seekers have lost faith in the hiring process and the job search process. That is a staggering statistic when you think about it. And I see it every day through the eyes of my career coaching clients, especially through the hiring process, but not just through the hiring process. Also, the onboarding process. I have clients who are in current jobs trying to leave those jobs to go elsewhere, and I'm hearing about what's going on in their tenure in their current jobs. And then I've also heard stories about the exit process as well. So I want to address some strategies to help your company stand out from those companies who may be causing some of the concerns and criticisms from job seekers, so that you are treating your candidates and your employees with fairness and respect, using the biblical strategies and the biblical principle of treating people the way you want to be treated. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about this. And I do also want to not just address the common concerns and criticisms from the job seekers, but also some of the common criticisms and concerns from the people on your side of the desk, those who are in the hiring process, or who are recruiting people and seeking talent. So I'm going to share some of those with you today. You're going to see here some that might really resonate with you, and you might think, okay, yes, amen to that. I totally agree. And as we go through these slides, I'm going to pull out some of the bullets I want to highlight, because we probably won't have time for me to cover every single bullet. But one of the common concerns or criticisms that I see from recruiters and HR staff is candidates not giving very good answers. They're giving canned answers. And so we're going to talk about that in a little bit, about how you can elicit more honest responses. So kind of start thinking about that, though, as far as, are you asking relevant questions? And we'll talk about some different examples of those relevant questions. Another common concern or criticism tends to be with the current, not the current, but the youngest generation that is coming into the workforce. And I think this is common every time a new, younger generation enters the workforce. I know I'm a Gen Xer, and we were called slackers for a very long time. Hopefully we've lived down that bad rap, but the current newest generation in the workforce, the Gen Zers, they are having to really, they are struggling with some stereotypes that they've gained, the bad rap that they've gained. And we understand and know that stereotypes exist for a reason, but we also know that they are a generalization and it doesn't apply to everyone. But there are some stereotypes, such as not being responsible, not being hardworking, not being loyal, fill in the blank, right? And then on the flip side of that, there are some common concerns from the job seekers. One of those is when they ask questions about a company, specifically about their culture, their company culture, they tend to receive canned answers. They're finding that companies aren't always forthcoming about their challenges or issues, especially when it comes to the company culture. And so that's something that you want to make sure that you're doing, is being transparent with candidates. And transparency is something the younger generations highly appreciate, in addition to older generations. And speaking of generations, we tend to think of age discrimination happening to the older generations, but it is happening among the older and the younger generations. A lot of that is because of those stereotypes that we talked about. But if you are familiar with the book From Strength to Strength by Arthur C. Brooks, he talks about the difference between fluid knowledge, that's what a younger generation brings to the table, and crystallized knowledge, something that the older generations bring to the table. And I think it's very important to have that kind of diverse knowledge in your staff for a good team. And then another common criticism and concern among job seekers that I want to address, and this is probably one of the biggest ones that's causing a lack of faith in the job search process, is candidates are either getting duped by ghost posts. And if you don't know what that is, I'm glad you don't know what that is. It means you're not doing it. But those are fake job ads to show current employees that the company is kind of giving the impression that the company is growing, even when it may not be. So they're posting these fake job ads with no intention of filling them. Also, there's some fake job ads that are just scammer ads. There's scammers out there trying to get information from job seekers. And then another thing that it comes up quite often, is something I've written about, is something that I've been interviewed by the Wall Street Journal about, is ghosting after interviews. After someone has spent an enormous amount of time researching, preparing for multiple round interviews, taking time off of work to go to those interviews, driving to and from those interviews, and then after jumping through all those hoops, going through several rounds, not hearing anything back. We're going to talk more in depth about this a little later. So like I said at the beginning, we are using these scriptures from the Bible to support what we're talking about today. Matthew 7:12 and Luke 6:31, treating people the same way you want to be treated. And that's something that you want to think about. If your spouse, your child if they had an interview and they thought it went really well, for example, and they didn't hear back, it's very difficult. It's a very difficult thing to bounce back from, because the candidate loses a lot of confidence, which further hurts their performance in future interviews with other companies. But there are several ways that business owners and HR staff and recruiting staff can do to carry out these scriptures. And again, like I said, to stand out from the other companies who are not necessarily showing respect and fairness. And one of those areas is beginning with the hiring process. And I do like to start with the hiring process because obviously that's where first impressions are made. Candidates may or may not know a lot about your company, your product, or your service, but they will get to know you in that interview process, and they will remember how they've been treated. So some tips on how to make your company stand out is, first of all, writing good job ads, being very clear and specific and realistic in the job ad. You want to avoid using industry jargon because you don't want to alienate someone who maybe has great skill set or would be a great hire coming from another industry. Also, companies tend to regurgitate and recycle the same ads, so you want to update those ads. In fact, I had a client just the other day tell me that he pays attention to that. He's like, I look to see if they're posting the same old ads that they've posted before, because that's a red flag to him. And another suggestion when you are writing your job ads is to consider including the salary in the ad, especially if you want to attract some of that fluid knowledge, some of that younger blood, those younger generations, because the Gen Zers, they will not apply for jobs typically if there is no salary listed. Another way to attract that younger blood, that fluid knowledge, is to post your job ads on Instagram and TikTok, because that's where a lot of Gen Zers are going for jobs. You may have heard this already, because they've lost faith in job boards like Indeed and what have you. And I see that all the time, that the job boards just aren't as reliable as they used to be. And you're probably experiencing that as well. I think both sides of the desk experience that. Also, knowing what to look for, be realistic about what you're looking for, and consider transferable skills and experience over educational degrees. I think a lot of companies are starting to realize this. They're starting to see that the value of education isn't what it quite used to be. But there's obvious exceptions. If you're hiring for an engineer, obviously they need to have an engineering degree. But I think being flexible with experience and skills over education is very important in this day and age. In addition, having realistic requirements. So you don't want to require 3 years of experience for an entry-level job. One is because a person with 3 years of experience probably is not looking for an entry-level job. And two, the person who is not likely to have that amount of experience. But I would say, it's okay to require some kind of experience, even if it's just an internship, and allowing internships, job shadowing, even volunteering experiences, especially if they're relevant to the job, to count as experience. And I would say take that a step further and make that clear in the job ad that you will include and count that experience, because otherwise applicants will just disqualify themselves and not even apply if they think that they're not meeting your requirements. I want to skip down to showing common courtesy. And this includes being on time for interviews. My clients know, and I think most candidates don't have to be coached to know that they need to be on time, if not 10 or 15 minutes early for a job interview. And they expect you to be on time as well, especially if they've got other interviews lined up that day. You don't want to make them late for those. It's also important to become skilled in interviewing, even if your company has a large enough and well-trained HR department to handle all screening interviews. You or your hiring managers should also learn how to interview as well. HR staff, be willing to coach the hiring managers on how to do this. This means learning what questions are illegal in your state to protect yourself, and what are better worded questions that will help you gather better info instead of those canned answers. So I mentioned earlier about asking more relevant questions as opposed to pointless questions like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? So in 2015, no one got the answer to that question right, because no one knew in 5 years that they would be in a pandemic. A better question to ask is, tell me what you've accomplished in the last 5 years. Another common interview question that tends to be rather pointless is, what is your greatest weakness? I have an HR friend who she actually likes to ask, what annoys you? And that's a harder question to dodge, and you do get a more honest response with that type of question. In addition, knowing how to handle salary discussions. So Gen Zers are more likely to negotiate their salary than any other generation. And so it's important to be ready for that. It's important to have these conversations. And again, they are looking to see what the salary is even before they apply. Also, some states have made it illegal recently to ask, what is your salary history? And I think that's probably going to be, other states will probably be following suit not long from now to make that question illegal. Talking about an irrelevant question, I don't see the relevance between someone's past salary and their future salary, especially if they are making a career change or they're coming into their first professional job from having waited tables. It's really comparing apples and oranges. Also, I encourage you not to ask for the candidate salary expectations if you are not going to also disclose the salary in the job ad. A better question to ask is, can you tell me about a time when you positively impacted your employer's bottom line, either directly or indirectly? I'm going to skip down to a topic that is very popular, and I might ruffle a few feathers, especially for people who really love and enjoy personality assessments. But personality assessments have their time and place, and the hiring process is not the right time. In fact, I think it's the DISC website. If you go to their website, they have a disclaimer saying that they strongly recommend that you do not use this as a hiring tool or for making hiring decisions. They're better used during the onboarding process or team building process. Also, you want to keep in mind that when someone is doing an assessment, their results often depend on the mood that they're in that day. So you have to take those assessments and those responses and results with a grain of salt. And if you do, really feel that you need to include personality assessments as part of the hiring process, maybe not put so much weight on that compared to skills, experience, or what have you. I once had a client who, she had a stellar resume. She had really proven herself in with some bigger companies that she'd worked for in New York. She came to Nashville. She interviewed with a much smaller company, a company that probably wasn't even big enough to have their own HR staff. And so they probably didn't understand and know how to use personality assessments properly. And so they had several rounds of interviews that she had to go through. She had to give a presentation. She passed all of those rounds with flying colors. They pretty much told her, you've got the job. We just need you to do one more thing. We need you to do this DISC assessment. That's the one that she was taking. And after she did it and they got her results, they told her, we're going to go in a different direction now. And she was heartbroken, and she was in tears when she came to me after that happened. And she even said, the way she described it, she's like, I felt violated. And so I think you have to be careful not to categorize people too much with those personality assessments. That's where the danger is in those. I want to skip down again to the last bullet here. Following up with the final round of candidates to let them know your decision. This really is important, as we talked about earlier, about the ghosting, what that can do to someone. I know you cannot get back in touch with every applicant to tell them that they didn't get the job, but at least those who are in the final round of the interview process, they have a right to know that you have offered the job to someone else. And I think it's important to be clear about that, not just say, oh, we decided to go a different direction. Because what does that really mean? Does that mean you've decided not to fill that position? Does it mean that you've hired someone else? You really leave the person guessing when you say that. And the employees, or I'm sorry, the job seekers, they really just want closure so they can move on. And I have clients who've told me, I would rather hear a no than nothing at all. So again, it's just that treating people the way you want to be treated and that common courtesy. With the onboarding process, and then once someone becomes an employee, there are additional ways to show fairness and respect. We'll kind of jump into once someone is on board and they are in the tenure of their employment with you. One thing that is important is not to require a bunch of unnecessary meetings and other time wasters, especially for those who are in doer roles, such as developer or a builder of things. They should be out doing instead of sitting in meetings. When meetings are necessary, make sure they stick to the agenda, start on time and end on time. And I really appreciate how Alice made sure to start this presentation on time. I'm a big fan of not punishing the people who are on time and rewarding the people who show up late. And so I think this is very important. And this also reminds me of when I started a job when I was still working for someone else. My first day of the required training that everyone has to go through when they're a new employee at this organization, it was a day-long thing, and we'd just come back from lunch, and the heat had been turned up and the lights were turned off, and we were told we're about to watch a video. And the video was about why you shouldn't fall asleep at work. I'm not lying, I'm not making this up. And it's like, okay, so is this a test? Because we have full bellies, the room is warm, and the lights are out. So obviously it's important to treat people as adults, as you can see from this quote on the right here. But there are other ways that you can support your employees and show respect and really help build morale among your employees, and that is to help them pursue their outside passions. One of my favorite ways a company can build morale is giving limited paid time off for your employees to volunteer with their favorite nonprofit or community service project. I once worked for a state university that provided this benefit, and not only did it improve employee morale, but it also improved the university's reputation in the eyes of the local community. Another example is having something like a lunch and learn once a month or once a quarter, where you allow one or more employees to give a show and tell on something they are passionate about and showcase their hobby to their work friends who want to learn more about it. And this reminds me of how much I loved show and tell when I was in kindergarten. It made me want to come to school that day. I was very excited to go to school that day. And, why can't we still enjoy that as adults? This is a really cool example of how to build morale, build community, and build loyalty. Also, you can build loyalty by helping your employees grow professionally in their skill set. And there are several ways you can do this. One is providing career development tracks and opportunities for them, and then also teaching them leadership skills, not just how to lead others, and not just for those who are maybe in positions that will help them grow in leadership, but also anyone who wants to learn how to lead themselves. And then allowing them to also set their own goals for their role in addition to the goals that their employer might have for them in that role. I love this quote on the right. This is by Dr. Deborah Watts. She's the Director of Graduate and Executive Education at the University of Tennessee Haslam College of Business. And it really rings true when you think about that. Now, I want to move on to the next experience that employees have throughout their journey with your company, and another opportunity for you to stand out among other companies and to show respect and fairness. One is by improving the exit interview, always using an unbiased third party to conduct the interview, such as an HR person, and making sure that that person makes the employee feel comfortable enough to share honest feedback and critique without any kind of retaliation. You want them to show that employee empathy, and then also asking for examples of the employee's critique, specific examples, so that you can take that, work with it, and use that information from the exit interview to make positive changes where necessary. In the unfortunate event that you have to implement a layoff, you want to do it in the most respectful way. Some employees now are videoing their layoffs, and those videos are going viral. If your company goes viral, make sure it's for the right reason for something like this. And one way you can exhibit respect and fairness is to provide outplacement counseling as part of the employee's severance packages. This benefits you, the company, in 4 ways. One, it protects the company's brand and reputation. It mitigates the risk of litigation and workplace violence. It reduces the costs of unemployment benefits. And most of all, it provides you the opportunity to do the right thing for your employees. This is something that I've been hired by several companies to come in and do when they've had to implement a layoff. And the employees have shared with me just how much that has meant to them and how much it has benefited and helped them. And I do provide discounted rates for various group sizes. If anyone wants any more information about that, you can use this QR code to pull that information. Also, when I am coaching a client and providing outplacement to a client, I am also teaching them career etiquette training, which I know a lot of companies are in need of right now for their younger generation employees who went through college during the pandemic and did everything online. They didn't learn at that time, when they needed it most, a lot of the social skills and office etiquette that they would need in the workplace. So this is, wow, I really have a lot of time left for questions and answers. This went a lot quicker than I expected it to. I'm going to share my contact information if anyone needs that, and I'd like to go ahead and open it up to questions for anyone who has any.
Anybody you can put it in the chat if you have questions, or you can put it in the question and answer, and we'll be happy to answer any of the questions. Tell me again, Lori, in the beginning you had said there was a statistic. What was that statistic that you mentioned then again?
Yes, I saw this in the Nashville Business Journal recently. It's 50% of job seekers have lost faith in the hiring process. 50%.
Yeah, that's a huge number. The interesting thing is my son is a early career, and it used to when he got his MBA and came home and was looking for his first job in Atlanta, and it was always very disheartening, somewhat comical if it wouldn't be so disheartening for him, is that he would go on to LinkedIn or wherever, and he would see entry level jobs, and then he would apply for those entry level jobs, and then he would get rejected and get a response back that said that he didn't have enough experience. And we were always like, the actual definition of an entry level job is somebody who is entry level. And so it was, like I said, so disheartening all the time when he would say, well, I got another rejection because I don't have enough experience. And he actually did internships every summer that he was home from college. So I thought, well, it just goes to show you that people, and I do think a lot of them were AI generated for sure, because he would get them at 3 in the morning or 2 in the
Right.
morning or anything like that. And you know that there's not a really a recruiter that's doing that. So,
I actually had a client who had the same experience. I just started working with him and he was telling me he got a response at 1 a.m. He's like, I'm trying to get experience, but nobody's giving me a chance because they say I don't have any experience.
right. Well, and like I said, he wasn't going for the, director or VP of
Right.
whatever. He was actually, had narrowed it down in the job description. It said it was an entry level role. So which is fine if they didn't think he was, but come up with a different response than saying you're not, you don't have enough years of experience. So I thought that was interesting. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so we're getting Julie asked on the use of assessment. Do you have assessments for teams that you recommend?
I mean, I think the DISC is a very good one. The Myers-Briggs is a very good one for teams and building teams to know, like, figuring out where you have maybe a team that has a void that needs to be filled with someone with a certain personality type. I personally am not a huge fan of personality assessments. I have many reasons, but if you do like using those, just understand that they're not completely scientific. Be aware of that. But I think, maybe more of an open-ended questionnaire can help in addition, if you want to offer that as a supplement to a personality assessment, just to get more feedback and get to know the employee a little bit better.
That's the other thing. Yeah, like I said, I have a lot of uh, test material from my son and listening to him and his struggle when he was trying to find a job. But one of the things too, he was trying to trick the personality test, and I said, "Don't trick the personality test. Just
Yeah, you can't do
do
that.
it." And so then when he was when they were trying to motivate him, they were, or using that information. I think that they were thinking that he needed this X kind of motivation when really he needed Y kind of motivation because he was trying to say what he thought they wanted him to say on the assessment. So my advice is always just take the assessment because they're not necessarily using it all the time for
Right.
to determine your but more like to your point about how to be a team, how you're going to be a team player and all that kind of thing.
And I would say
Another
in addition to
question.
that, real quick, I would say
Yeah.
in addition to that, not having these assumptions that, oh, only salespeople are extroverts. I have a good friend who she's excellent at sales, but she was struggling when she was in between jobs trying to find a job and she'd have to take an assessment. And she's introverted. That's just how her results come out every time. But she's great at sales. And she's like, they're only looking at whether I'm introverted or extroverted. It's like I have so many more things I bring to the table, so many more skills, and can close the deal, but they're not even allowing me to prove that. So just kind of keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, for sure. Another question we have is, can you say more about posting roles on Instagram and TikTok? Are the postings similar to what you would see on LinkedIn, or are they fundamentally different?
Well, I think one of the biggest differences is that the people who are posting on Instagram and TikTok, they understand and know the audience there. They know that Gen Zers are wanting to see the salary. So including the salary is you're more likely to get responses and applicants for those roles if the salary is listed. I think that's probably the biggest difference.
Perfect. Yeah. When we always talk in general terms of salary, I always say, I just want to know what makes you happy to get up in the morning too, because, I'm not talking about a specific role in general. I just want to know what you're targeting so we know what to look for and help you with your next career move for sure.
Yes, and I would say too, but again, asking what the job seeker's salary expectations are. They don't know what your budget is for salaries. So
Hmm.
that's not really a fair question to ask in that sense as well.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Any other questions that anybody has? I don't see any more in the someone says, I have a general observation and I'm wondering if you see this same thing and why. Younger applicants are not considering benefits, fringes, and perks as valuable part of the compensation package as older applicants.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've noticed that too, and I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe it's because they're younger and they think, oh, I'm invincible. I'm not going to need health insurance, or I'm not going to need a 401k anytime soon. Maybe they have a little bit of a jaded view, but I can't say for sure if that's why it is. But very interesting observation.
Yeah, I think it is just a matter of they just see the number there. They don't necessarily, and some of it I know, that the booklet that you get from a company when you sign, when you start with a company and they give you the quote benefits booklet and it's 42 pages long,
Yes.
they are overwhelmed by that. And I know a million benefits people who always say, I'm happy to go over the information with anybody. And that's what benefits administrators do, um, for organizations, but a lot of the time I would say they're overwhelmed by that information, and maybe a little short-sighted too, that they don't see that benefits in the 401k and stuff, that if you start investing now when you're young, then that makes a huge difference by the time you're older too.
I would say to that as well, I think there might even be, in addition to that, some intimidation. They feel intimidated that they don't understand investments, financial planning, and they just kind of are scared to admit that they don't understand it. And so if they just ignore it, it won't, they won't be found out or what have you.
Yeah, I would agree with that too, for sure. Another question, have you noticed any trends in individual versus panel interviews?
I have seen a little bit more of my clients getting some panel interviews, but not a significant increase. And I think it depends on the industry too. I know when I was interviewing in higher education, I always had panel interviews.
Mhm. I would say also the higher level the job, I would say
Yes.
too. If it's a higher level job, it's going to be a panel interview or include a panel interview more than for more of an entry level, I would say, job or a mid-level job for sure. But uh, definitely the higher levels have panels, and it seems like the more the better these days. So for sure. Yeah, excellent. Perfect. Any other questions? I don't see any more in the question and answer box, and I think we've answered all of them in the chat. So I really appreciate your time. Here you can see on this slide how to get a hold of Lori with her phone number, her email, and then also her website. If you want to go to the next slide as well, it shows your QR code, I believe. Is that the one, or that next?
Oh,
Then
it was on this
oh,
one.
there we go. Yeah, just make sure time you can do the QR code for her information as well. That was the one before. Yeah, so and for anyone who does not know about us, then Talent Connections, we are a human resources executive search firm and consulting located in Atlanta, Georgia. We were founded in 1999, and we have spent over 2 decades perfecting our craft in HR services while creating thousands of transformative connections. We also have a sister company, Career Spa, and that provides career transition and coaching services as well, to help find your career path and advantage in this evolving market for sure. So there is our two information about our company. The activity code then on the next slide. You can see this activity code is 25-TPPFK, and it has been approved for professional development credit, for one professional development credit for recertification through SHRM. So you can follow their website there listed at the bottom at shrm.org/certification. Also, we will be sending this out. We have been recording this, so we will be sending this out to all the people who participated. So thank you so much for attending today. Remember to mark your calendars for our next Wednesday webinar, which will be Wednesday, October 15th. We have changed the date from the 2nd to the 3rd Wednesday, so we can attend a SHRM, Georgia event that Tila and Tom will be panel speakers on for sure. So Wednesday, mark your calendar for Wednesday, October 15th. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you very much, Lori, for your time. We really
Thank you for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
And everybody have a great rest of your day.